And this is an amazing thing if the viewers here only take away one thing from our conversation, and something that there's nothing here that you need to believe in. True spirituality is beyond belief. It has nothing to do with changing your belief systems, because that just means changing the thoughts that you think. Mm-hmm. Spirituality means discovering that there is another dimension of consciousness in you, which we could call awareness. I sometimes call it presence. There's a term that's become quite popular these days, and that is mindfulness. Mm-hmm. Personally, I don't use the term. It's a lovely thing. It points to the same thing, but I don't use the term mindfulness because the word itself seems to imply that your mind is full. Mm-hmm. But so, discovering then that a lot of the unhappiness that you experience in your life, and unhappiness, I'm using that as a generic term, unhappiness can be a little thing like a slight irritation when you're waiting in line at the supermarket and the line is not moving, a slight irritation arises. That's already a small form of unhappiness. Or you can have extreme unhappiness when you arrive home after your shopping trip to the supermarket and you suddenly see your house has gone up in flames. That's a little bit more unhappiness, but the mechanism is the same. Now, for most people go through their daily lives experiencing many times forms of upset and irritation and anger. This is quite normal. And other people carry and have an undercurrent of discontent and unease in their lives, which is a mild form of unhappiness, residual unhappiness. There's an undercurrent, and they may not even know it. But I invite anybody to experiment with this, and next time you're in a situation that either upsets you, or makes you angry, or irritates you, to ask yourself, how does this upset or this irritation arise? How is it caused? For example, you may be standing at, let's go back to that very simple situation. It's sometimes good to start with very simple situation because the mechanism is always the same, whether it's a small, seemingly insignificant form of unhappiness or a huge manifestation of unhappiness. The mechanism that creates unhappiness is always the same. So you're standing in line at the supermarket and you get really irritated about the check at the cashier who is too slow and is having a conversation with that person, and the whole setup isn't working, how awful it is, and you've got, I don't have enough time for the dialogue in your head creates. The dialogue that tells you that this is a bad situation creates an emotion that reflects that kind of thought, these kinds of thoughts. And then you ask yourself, how would I experience this situation if I did not add the dialogue or the monologue to it? If I simply took this situation for what it is without adding mental dialogue to it, without adding mental negative interpretation to it, because it makes no difference. It doesn't change the situation. There's no possibility of action. If there's a possibility of action, then of course you can take action. That's a different matter. And then you might experience for the first time being in exactly the same situation that you recognize as the isness of the present moment, and then you become at ease with the isness of the present moment and do not add unnecessary baggage, mental baggage, to the simple and ultimately neutral isness of the present moment. So you have separated yourself from your conditioned thinking, the voice in the head, and suddenly you see, oh, this is actually, it just is. I'm breathing, and you may even, because this will bring about a brief cessation in this mental noise, when you come to accept this moment as it is, because you realize many times there's not much you can do right now. You can only say, well, this is what is right now. Mm-hmm. If action is possible, of course you take action, if it's possible or necessary. So you come into an alignment with the present moment, and you realize you're now able to separate an external situation from your mental interpretation of the external situation, especially negative interpretation of the external situation.
That actually there is no problem in each present moment.
No.
It's your own mental expectations
Yes.
and imaginations and preferences.
Yes.
Causing you agitation.
Yes. And that is quite a realization that there's the possibility of freedom arises. Your inner state does not have to be totally determined by external conditions. You're not at the mercy any longer of external conditions, which means, for example, also people. Some people are, people are very problematic. So somebody is rude to you, or somebody fails to do something that they should do or should have done, all kinds of things that you can complain about in people's behavior. And a lot of the complaining that one does about other people is totally futile. It does not change them, because when you talk to others about them, you say, well, do you know what he did? And then he said, and then he did that. Oh my God, he did that. Or you do it in your head. It's all futile. It does not change that person. So if somebody is rude to you, like, he doesn't, you're carrying your, or in the supermarket, you're carrying your shopping and somebody slams the door on your face because it's rude. For many people, that can trigger a train of negative thoughts that lasts for the next 10, 15, or 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. So that means, and if you're completely identified with the stream of thinking, you don't even know, you think you're now experiencing a bad reality. Because you have not taken a step back from your thinking. You have not become aware of your thinking. You are so in your thoughts that you are totally identified with the thoughts. So the key then is to be able to separate your mental interpretation of things from the simplicity of the isness of the present moment. So you don't add unnecessary suffering to situations. You no longer create unnecessary suffering for yourself, because you realize the unhappiness that you're experiencing in a given situation, in 90% of the cases, is not produced by the situation. It is produced by the way in which your mind tells a story about the situation. It's the voice in the head that creates a large part of your unhappiness. And that's quite a realization. And that applies to small situations, it applies to bigger situations too. And some people live with a very critical and very negative voice in their head for years. They live with somebody, they criticize themselves continuously, some of them, or they criticize continuously other people and situations. There's always something wrong with me or with situations, or they tell themselves stories of how bad my life is, how unfairly I've been treated by life and other people, and I wasn't given a chance, and now it's all over. There's no point in even. I'm too old now to. People carry very unhappy stories around in their head, and they call that my life. There are not that many people who are really happy with their lives. There are more people around who are unhappy with their lives. My life didn't go the way it was meant to go. It didn't go the way I was expecting it to go. Many things went wrong, and so people carry unhappy stories, and they derive their sense of identity from the unhappy story. Not realizing that it's an unhappy story, they call it me and my life. So that is and nobody has pointed out to them this is not. It does not have to be that way. You can become aware of the stories that you're telling yourself, the stories that give you your sense of your unhappy sense of self, and realize these are certain thoughts. I call it thoughts that create what we call your life situation. Mm-hmm. Your life situation, your past and your so-called future. And there's no life situation that is not problematic. Everybody has their set of problems. Mm-hmm. Every life situation has its difficulties and its problems. If it's not one thing, it's another. You cannot go through life without experiencing almost continuously problems, the word that I prefer is challenges. You cannot go through life without continuously experiencing challenges, either of interpersonal relationship challenges, close relationship challenges, health challenges, physical challenges, financial challenges, professional work challenges, living situation challenges. There's always something that goes wrong somewhere. So that's only to be expected. But this does not have to evolve into an unhappy story of me and my life. So you're able to differentiate between the story of my life, my so-called life, my life situation, and life. So in The Power of Now, I write about the importance of distinguishing between what is your life situation, which includes all your problems and your past and all those things. That's fine, that exists. But in addition to your life situation, which exists in time, past and future, there's something more vital, and I call that your life. Now, your life situation, as I said, exists in time, but your life is now. So if your attention moves into the present moment, it's a little bit like waking up out of this dream of continuous thinking, useless thinking, not constructive thinking, useless thinking that tells you how unhappy you are. So that kind of thinking that creates an unhappy, fictitious mental entity that you think is you, useless thinking. You step out of that, which is almost like a dream of hypnotic trance of useless thinking. You step out of that, and suddenly it's a bit like somebody who's waking up from a dream. And this is why we use spiritually, we use the term awakening. It's used in many traditions, spiritual awakening. You wake up out of this stream of thinking into the present moment. So you suddenly become alert, and a moment ago you were still thinking about how awful your life is. That's your life situation. Maybe it is awful, but that's an interpretation. There's your life situation. What about your life? What do you mean, my life? Well, this moment is your life. Your life is always this moment. Is there anything wrong with this moment? A question I ask in The Power of Now. What is your problem right now? If you're really present, because you come into the present moment, which is all there ever is. And in this present moment, what is your problem? And then you have to really wake up into the present moment and see, well, right now I'm breathing, I'm sitting here and I'm looking around and I'm seeing a bit of sky and I'm seeing a potted plant and I'm seeing the flowers. It's all quite lovely, and it's relatively quiet here. The temperature is fine. And I may even feel that there's an aliveness in my body. I breathe and I feel alive. Every cell is alive. I call it the inner body awareness. You become aware that you're alive in your body. So you're stepping out of your mind, you're stepping into sense perceptions, come to your senses, and you also come into your body. And then you're now in the present moment. That's your life. And yes, of course, you have to deal with the stuff in your life situation, but not be lost in it. You deal with it when the moment comes, when you are able to take action or do something, then you deal with it. But you're no longer lost in it, and you're no longer completely absorbed by this unhappy pseudo-identity that's created by useless thinking. So you come into the present moment. This is your life, and the rest is your life situation. And then after a while, you're able to balance. You're dealing with your life situation and experiencing life directly, and then beginning to appreciate the present moment and realizing that is actually quite wonderful.
In this present moment, there's no problem. And what a remarkable journey you've taken us on. You're not your thinking. You are the awareness discerning those thoughts. And unbelievably, we're already at that point in our talk where we're winding down. We just have a couple minutes left. So I'm wondering if there's some final thoughts you have for our viewers out there across Canada and around the world, how to get out of your thinking and into that state of awareness.
Well, first, the recognition that a lot of the thinking that you do, or rather you don't do it, a lot of the thinking that happens to you, because people say, I think, but really thinking happens to them. In the same way, I mean, the heartbeat happens to you too, so you don't say, I beat my heart. The heartbeat happens to you. So thinking happens to people. And then if you first of all realize a lot of the thinking is not only useless, but actually destructive. Huge amounts of negative thinking about yourself and life and so on. Things like also regret and resentment, thinking about the past, anxiety, worry, excessive thinking about the future, excessive thinking about the past. So this overthinking, as we could call it, you realize the futility of it. In the moment that it happens, you can say, oh, do I want this? Do I want to make myself unhappy? And you begin to realize, here's the situation, and here's my negative thinking about it. Do I want this? No, life would be more pleasant without it. And then you begin to realize, okay, I'm going to let go of that, and by choice, you come more into the present moment. You choose to come to your senses, to look around, to take a breath, 2 or 3 conscious breaths. And so you enter the present moment, and you can feel the qualitative difference between being absorbed in useless thinking and being present in the now. And so the term I use that might be helpful is, ask yourself, what is your relationship with the present moment? At any given time, what is my relationship with the present moment? Am I totally ignoring it? Am I making it into a means to an end? Am I making it into an enemy? Or am I making it into a friend? And then you will see that there's a huge qualitative difference if you make the present moment into a friend rather than an enemy. So you become friendly with the isness of things. You no longer argue that much with things that happen, and especially things that before you would have found upsetting, because you might have noticed that life is full of things that seem to be obstacles on your path of where you want to go. life does that to you. It puts obstacles in your path. And instead of complaining when things don't go the way you expect them to go, you immediately come into an inner alignment with what is, and then you see what action you can take, rather than complaining or becoming angry or upset with what is. You align yourself with life, which is always now. And the amazing thing is that then life, you begin to experience, if you live in that way, you begin to experience that a more harmonious flow to your life, and you actually, this sounds almost magical, that you begin to experience circumstances as more helpful rather than antagonistic. Why? Because life reflects back to you your attitude towards life is reflected back to you as events. So if your attitude is accepting and friendly with the present moment, then you're more likely to attract pleasant circumstances. Not that life will not challenge you again, it still does that, but that's okay. The challenges then no longer produce unhappiness in you. They're just seen for what they are, and then you do what you can do.
Well, thank you so much for your generosity of time, your generosity of spirit. I wish you best of luck on your upcoming tour across Canada. And dear viewer, you would be nuts not to be in this person's company. He's a true spiritual master, Mr. Edgar Tolle, author of The Power of Now. This has been another remarkable meeting with another remarkable person. Have a safe, happy, and healthy rest of your day. Take care.